Good afternoon. Thank you very much for GKN for that lovely lunch. That's great. My name is Suzanne Hill, and I am here to facilitate the creating a zero defects roadmap activity for the next 2 hours. So as Lisa said earlier today, you'll be doing some work. So you're going to be doing some activity this afternoon. So I hope you had a great lunch. I've had conversations from Star Wars through quality training through to yoga mudras. So it's been quite exciting. So who am I? I have worked in aerospace and automotive, so both Rolls-Royce and Michelin tyres. And I I'm now a trainer for SAE, so I train some of the major training materials, so the AS 13100, DPRV. I've got some DPRV students in the room here and people who have been to the 13100 course. And I worked at Rolls-Royce under Ian Riggs. Those of you who know Ian, I worked for Ian for many a year for my sins. During that time, as Lisa mentioned, our customers, our Aero engine customers, so the airframers, want zero defects. They want products that work. And I remember, let's be polite about this, being hauled across to Toulouse on several occasions during my time at Rolls-Royce to explain what was going on. Okay, and at the time, those of you from Rolls-Royce that are here, Airbus actually wanted Rolls-Royce to be a boring supplier, i.e. a supplier that didn't cause them any problems. Always sent engines on time, to the correct quality, every time. And at the time, I didn't actually have a roadmap, a strategy to actually drive that forward. And what we're now going to help provide you with today, or help facilitate you work out what it should look like, that's what this session is all about. Okay, because we've done the what this morning, what we need to do. We've done the why we need to do it. Now we're going to go towards the how. So we're going to help you create a roadmap which describes how to achieve zero defects within your organisations. Now, many of you will be well on the way. Some of you maybe not so. So because we're going to work on tables, you can help each other as to how to do that. So we're going to work in your table groups. We're going to give you some scenario information. And we're going to ask you to identify 3 phases of a roadmap, a strategy for your organisation to follow. That's if you choose to do that, but you know, as part of the working together, AESQ and the supply chain, this is some help that we want to provide for you. So we will be looking at three phases of a zero defect roadmap. We will ask you to choose which activities go into each of the 3 phases, and to identify a lead, a role within your organisation that would lead each of those key activities. Now, we've said often today already that this is not a single function activity. This is a cross-functional piece of effort. So understanding that there are 67%, I think it was, of quality people here. It's us being the quality conscience of your organisations, but actually we don't do much of this, we facilitate that it is done within your organisation, whether it be design engineers, manufacturing engineers, purchasing, finance, to name just a few. And we'll also ask you to think about the deployment steps for each activity. And then at the end, once we've mapped out those 3 phases, to decide how those phases need to be sequenced, because we can't do everything at once. As Joachim has said, as Thomas has said already today, we need to prioritise. It's a journey. We can't do everything all at once. So, on your tables, underneath your number, you have 2 documents. Please can you make sure that you grab one of those documents each. There's an A3 size document, the big one. This one is the one that is yours to take away. Well, they're both to take away, but this one's the most useful one. So you've got 3 phases written on there, and also an outline of the activity that we're doing today. This is the one that you need to do your writing in. The other one is the guide for us, telling us the 3 phases, the scenario information that we've come up in these phases. Don't get too hung up on the data. We've just got 3 periods in an organization's life where you might find yourself at any point in time. And also 3 phase titles. And then at the back, key activities. But I'll go through this as we go forward. So to start with, we're going to start in scenario 1. We're going to get you thinking about if you worked in an organisation with metrics that look quite stunningly horrible. So this is the scorecard of your organisation. Lots of escapes, lots of concessions, lots of non-conformance reports, scrap, rework, and a total cost of non-quality running into the several millions. And your customers are being impacted. Just like I said before with Airbus, very, very demanding customer, want to know what you're doing about it. And this is exactly the same. Your AESQ customers will be trying to find out what you're doing about the fact that they're unhappy. So the leadership are a bit grumpy. Nice grumpy face there. Customers crying their eyes out, and employees not particularly enjoying being at work because they're making scrap. The machine tool is puffing smoke. Sorry about the graphic, but that was quite good. Puffing smoke, and the president of the company is asking for a plan. What might you do to actually improve these metrics? What activity, what immediate activity are you putting in place? So you've got a poorly performing organisation, and we need to make sure, we need to do some sort of immediate action to improve this situation. And just a hint, we're not doing APQP yet, okay? Because as, it was brilliant actually, and not planned, Thomas identified the robuster size, I think he put on his slide, which was great. So making things robust first before you then automate, so it's getting things in control first. So as you can see on your top left of your chart, I'm in the introduction now, and this is what we need to do in round round 1. So we're going to ask you to identify the key activities. Well, firstly, actually, we're going to ask you to identify the title of the phase, and then identify the key activities within each phase, identify the lead role for each activity, key deployment steps, and then we're going to ask you to say, what help do you need from your customers? Because remember, your customers are in the room here. What help do you need from your customers to be able to do this first phase? And we're going to repeat this for the 3 phases throughout this afternoon. And the customers here will listen to that feedback and work towards doing something about it. So, bottom left of your A3 sheet, you have an area to fill in. Okay, we put some acronyms up there, and we'll keep this up during the exercise so that you can make reference to it. The first thing to do is to identify from the smaller A4 sheet what the phase title would be. And your options are proactive, reactive, and preventive. And I've put some descriptions on the bottom there. Okay? So you need to firstly, and you've got facilitators on your tables, most of you, so they'll be able to support you on that. But I think the first one is quite obvious. We need to do immediate things, so you can decide which of the phase title you use. Then from the list on the back, identify 5 key activities from that list that you would do immediately. Okay? You might also want to add things as well. So we've given you more room to add another couple of as well. So note down what key activities, and this is going to become your takeaway from this session. Then, and obviously have conversations around your decisions on your tables, because it's good to talk. Then identify the key roles within your organisation that will lead each activity. And that box is big enough to put maybe 1 or 2, but at least a key lead. And it won't necessarily be quality each and every time because of that cross-functional working. And it may be different between your companies on the table as well. Then, that activity, which metric will that activity actually target? What will it help to reduce? What's the key hurt to the customer in this phase? That's the one you need to target a lot of in this phase. And then key deployment steps, which might include generating the process into your quality management system, training people, facilitating the rollout, pilots, that type of thing. And then at the end, there's some room to identify customer support. What customer support do you think you would need to achieve this first phase? Now, that's quite a lot to do and lots of discussion. We have given you, was it 20 minutes? 25 minutes for that for the first item. Okay. So we will leave you to do that. And when we come back, we will ask a few tables. What 2 key aspects do you want to share from your conversations? There's no right or wrong answer for all of this. The titles probably are the most important philosophically as such. And please also share what support you want from the customer, which we may put up onto a flip chart somewhere. I think that would be quite useful. So we're going to do that for phase 1. I'll just go back to that. Has anybody got any questions? Is it all reasonably self-explanatory? It may be useful if we can just to have the, yes, somebody's already, as if by magic. Is that a button that you're pressing? Yes. Brilliant. Thank you, Eva Marie. So I will start 25 minutes on my clock, and I will give you a 5-minute warning. Okay? Have fun. So that's my timer going. So we've had the 25 plus minutes. So I'm not going to go around every single table, but we'll do a few tables and then go on to the next phase. So does anybody want to volunteer? Let's move on one. 2 key aspects of your conversation and the support required from the customer. Anybody want to share that? Yes, thank you very much. Do we have any flip charts, actually? Flip chart paper that I can scribble down?
Yes, so.
Oh, excellent. You fix. Thank you.
Yeah, we had an excellent session here. In fact, one comment from one of our team members was the timing for this exercise couldn't be more perfect because he has to lay out a plan when he gets back. So kudos for this exercise. DPRV was one activity, followed by audit, shop floor process compliance, problem solving, and focus parts, real right first time. Yeah, I'll get that. DPRV, though, kind of 2 elements to that. Are you currently a DPRV or not? You kind of need to know that. And so if you're already a DPRV and you're part of the issue driving these metrics in the wrong direction, then how do you reconcile that? Are you going to add double DPRV, train the current DPRV on what they're missing? Are there requirements that they're misinterpreting? So there's a lot going on there depending on if they're already a DPRV and we're getting escapes out of there, they're missing things. If they're not a DPRV, then that's a whole other subject about getting them trained, going through the training, getting them tested, and then having them execute. Second thing was audit, and again, that has a lot to it as well. You got to go through the data and determine what types of audits, product audits, process audits, system audits. There's a lot of metrics going in the wrong direction. It kind of says the quality management system may be at question, and that's a much broader audit. Determine the types of processes that institute process audits where they're needed, determine types of audits and checklists. Then we picked shop floor process compliance to look at the day-to-day work instructions and standard work that people are using, because if it's not being used properly, that could be causing immediate problems that are hurting the customer. So determine the processes and work instructions to audit. Again, create checklists, set up a schedule and communicate it, and then provide training. Problem solving, 8D. Again, escapes is certainly going to be required to use 8D problem solving. Who's going to lead the different problem-solving investigations? Are they properly trained? Who do they pull into each individual investigation? What does the data suggest that needs to be done for investigations? Are they well trained in the 9 steps of 8D? So there's a lot going on there. And finally, focus parts, right first time. That would be the ME and operations group that would look at that. In that regard, they're going to have to go and do data analysis to pick what are the top 3 to 5 focus areas that they're going to go through and collect some detailed turn-back data to find out where these problems are coming from at the lowest possible or earliest point that are causing a lot of these metric issues. So again, we'd have to organize around that. So we had supplier quality leading the DPRV, quality leading the audit, operations, the shop floor process compliance, quality, the 8D problem solving in terms of pulling the people together and leading the investigation or facilitating it. Yeah. And finally, ME and ops on the focused parts, right first time. That's pretty much
perfect. Have you got anything that the customer can help support you with that I can put on my flip chart?
A lot of training. That came up, okay. A lot of training.
Yep.
Clear explanation of expectations. And priorities. Yeah.
And sorry?
And priorities.
Prioritize.
And clarification of expectations.
Yeah. Clear expectations and priorities.
Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, not all of you will have had those that this table has identified. And I don't really want to say this is what we had, because we do have our list here. But actually, if it's what you think you need as immediate reaction to the customer being, excuse my French, pissed off, then that's great. Fantastic. Are there any other tables who would like to share? Yes, thank you.
So we unfortunately probably had what every company has, could not agree on the steps.
Yep.
We did not have consensus.
That's fine.
And I think we lost a lot of time because we didn't get to consensus. So I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but we had like 3 against 1. And sometimes when you have a person that's very, very focused, how do you work through those type of difficulties in communication? So, but one of the things that we did ultimately get to some type of agreement, I think. And I love the DPRV. We did not think of that because we did audit, compliance, shop floor process, escape route, cause containment versus prevention. Because we felt containment needed to be the first thing. Problem solving and then focus parts, right time. I call it first time yield, sorry, it's my GE speak. And we pretty much had the same thing as far as quality and the manufacturing and ops team as far as who leads it. Our metrics were anywhere between the escapes and the NCRs. But then at the customer support required, we did say the customer should tell us where was it detected and by whom. Was it the purchaser? Or was it the end customer? Because that will determine if the purchaser caught it at the warehouse before it got to the end customer. That's a whole lot easier to contain versus a fielded situation. And then a description of the escape. Is it an unusual visual condition or is it an actual non-conforming part? And that's pretty much what we kind of got to. We didn't really get to the deployment steps, like I said, because we unfortunately had the wonderful discussion about where to begin.
Okay, so I'm grabbing from that where more detail about any of the escapes, because that will help you with your root cause corrective action. Okay, with respect to your disagreements, in this environment, because you're from different organizations, I think disagreements, non-correlation is actually fine, because something might be necessary in one organization and not necessary in yours because you've already got it. So I think this is good to have the conversation because you are learning from each other, because many of you will have already implemented much of this with limited or great success. So this is really personal to your own organization. As this table says, you need it to go away and actually do your implementation. So it needs to be focused for your own organization, but it's great to have those conversations because you probably learnt more about what the other's doing in that as well. And that's part of what we're doing today, is to learn from each other as much as taking away information to go and deploy yourselves. So that's fantastic. Let's have one more table and then we'll move on.
So won't go through all of this, but I found it fairly interesting. So we kind of did 5 different things and would have some brief conversations about it. One of the things that kind of stuck out to me is we're in a very reactive mode, right? One of the team members, and I won't point at who, listed approvals on there as one of the activities. And I'm sitting there going, you know, key activities, why would we be thinking about approvals? And instead of thinking of it from a manufacturing perspective, thinking of it from a servicing perspective, and is the defect actually a manufacturing defect or is it a defect in paperwork in compliance? Still an issue, still a defect that we have to have. Would not have been on a bingo card for something at the very beginning. So I just found it as a very interesting perspective. Speaking of, that's why we all came here, is to look at different perspectives. So
Brilliant.
Interesting.
Good.
A couple of the customer items.
Yes.
And one of the things there is probably being able to look up and down the entire supply chain. Is the output of one part of the supply chain a good input to the next? So plenty of examples, the most obvious ones being something like you have a casting supplier that produces a conforming part to the casting drawing until the next company starts machining it. And as soon as you cut into that part and you've opened up some of that surface porosity that was compliant to the casting drawing is now non-compliant to the machining drawing. So we have those non-conformances, we have those potentials for escape because that vision wasn't given for this process to this process to this process. Those are the ones that for me are something that really hit home. And I will say I see this much better now with the newer products, but certainly with legacy products, it is a huge, huge challenge to solve.
So actually looking at this as a whole supply chain
Yep.
escape, if it was, you know, if you have like a casting problem.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's not a casting problem. The casting problem actually meets the print, meets the casting print, but doesn't meet my machining print.
Yeah, so working together within the whole supply chain
For how do we then
to achieve
resolve
yes.
and make those improvements? Thinking about that maturity curve, once we get compliance to 13.1, where do we go from there?
Yeah.
It's those next steps.
Brilliant. Good.
That's it.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, team.
Sorry, can I just throw a slight dissident in there? It's just same table,
Yes.
sitting next to each other and not talking to each other. Couple of other areas where the primes can help, if I can throw these in. Change management. Actually being able to fully resource the change management process that comes out from identifying how we need to get back under control. It may require change to fix process.
Yeah.
Quite often we'll hit a brick wall on that and not be able to change a process that's not capable. And one way to potentially help
So this is
that-
more for legacy parts as such,
is more
existing
legacy,
production.
yeah.
Yeah. So change management, fixed process.
And the other thing that I'm hearing noises out in the market, and I think it's a very sensible idea. When you're in the reactive mode and you're trying to regain control, potentially look to agree some rework processes that mean you don't need to go to concession all the time. So actually say, if we have that deviation to fixed process, it's always been accepted. So actually allow us just to note that, NCR it internally, correct it. It's in the process list, but not need to use the primes or the customer's engineering resource to fix those so that they can then focus on the main things that do need changing.
So it's almost like repeat issues, delegation of
It is,
the
yeah.
MRB side. I think it would still need to be formally MRB'd,
They do.
but some level of delegation. Because regulatory-wise, it doesn't meet specification, therefore you can't certify it, can you? So you would have to do some level of bridging of that.
You can bridge
but
it.
if that's done internally, that would be great.
deviation on the cert of conformity if that's been agreed.
Yeah. So standard rework. Okay, brill. I'm getting some good stuff down that we can share with our customers. Right. We've moved on. Well done, team. You have achieved a lot in the activities that you have been doing. So you're still working at the same company. You haven't been moved on. The latest metric is showing key performance metrics, as we've got here. And they appreciate your reactive methods. But there's still improvement required. The president of the company is asking for proactive plans. So we've actually given you the next title, which is fine. We're helping you, yes? So your metrics have improved. Your scrap bin's much significantly lower. And you're starting to do some maintenance on your equipment. Your leadership is happier, but still disgruntled. The customer's gone away, note. So the customer is not on your back, but you still know that you've got a lot of cost of non-quality, okay? And the employees are still not overly happy. So we're doing the same thing. So I'm just going to go back to this. Remember, choose. So we know what the title is because I've just given it to you. Choose your next activities. And remember, what's left, you need to split up. Okay, you can't do it all at once. So choose the next activities to be proactive. So this is addressing your Paretos, identifying what you need to work on next. And don't forget to give us the, think about the customer support. So I will give you, I think we've got 20 minutes for this, and we'll have another discussion. Thank you. Right, now it's really raining. Thank you, Eva Marie. What we're going to do now is we're going to go around the room again to talk about the next... Does this work? Yay. We're going to do round 2 debrief. So sharing 2 key aspects, or however many you want, to be honest with you, from phase 2 and the support required from the customer. So anybody want to volunteer to start with? I did volunteer a couple of tables. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. This one here, Eva Marie. Thank you.
Which one? Oh, Jill.
Yeah, in this table, we raised 5 key activities, SPC, 5S, shop floor compliance, TPM, and audit. And I realized these are mainly focused on the shop floor control. And we discussed what steps we need. And one idea is for SPC, really need the IT system introduction. So that's one important steps we talked about the introduction. And for the customer support, we might need the customer to define key characteristics to provide prioritize the focus of these.
So key characteristics? to
prioritize, to decide the prioritization.
key characteristics to prioritize your process control. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Anybody else? This table in the middle here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think similar to some of the earlier sessions where you tend to look at it from your own company point of view. I think in the main we was in agreement with things like SPC, TPM and 5S, maybe error proofing in there as well. But we also discussed the human factors element and whether that fits in here or not. But
Okay.
in reality, I think human factors fits everywhere.
Agreed.
But also on the APQP element as well, does that fit into this, or is that proactive or preventative or a combination, or are the tools in there? So I think in the main we was in agreement, but there's certainly a lot of these categories that cover all the phases.
Okay, that's fine. And to be honest with you, but you do need to prioritise. This is the key thing, because we don't all have endless resources. Definitely.
Yeah, I think one thing as well, which is important to me from a customer support point of view, is that you have regular technical feedback meetings, because as a manufacturer, you make to a drawing, but really sometimes it's about understanding the drawing intent rather than the design intent and things like that. And sometimes a complex design could be made a lot easier if the manufacturers and the designers sat together.
So a regular customer supplier technical review,
Yeah,
that type of
some
thing.
customers we have 12-monthly reviews and they're very beneficial. We give cost downs as a result, and we get less non-conformance and parts that are easier to manufacture.
Yeah, fabulous.
Okay.
Good. One table we were talking some systems. Was it this table here? Yes.
So in this table, there was quite nice conversation, because on the first phase, we were thinking about basic things like 5S, shop floor compliance, and everything on the first. So on the second one, the first thing we put is the approvals. Approvals, okay? This is the first one we put. Why we put approvals there? Because we think that it will help us to rise the level. Okay, so this is something that it was needed in order to ensure to have a minimum level everywhere. So approval is really important. On the first one, we were in firefighting, and this one is rise the level up to the approval, necessary approval.
Yeah.
And we also had the same conversation regarding the human factor also. Is it this moment we need to do that? Is it later? Is it before? So what we have decided around the table is that maybe we need to have, let's say, a mature company in order to be able to deploy the complete human factor. And we can do step by step and do something on this one, maybe work on distraction, maybe work on stress. But to have the complete view of human factor, we think that it may be on the next phases.
Right, okay. So you're thinking about human factors covering all phases, but maybe real focus in the final phase.
Exactly, when the company is mature, really mature. So now we can focus on human factor after I've cleaned all the things we have before.
Yes. Okay, good. Is there anything that we have not got on the list? Has anything popped up that we've missed and you guys are already doing? Because let's share that. Carl?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Carl again. The bit what got interesting in the conversations was the discussion around APQP. And where we got to is actually maybe PPAP should be added to the list and allow the logic here. And there are 3 companies in the room which I can sort of back this logic up: Honeywell, Pratt & Whitney and Rolls-Royce. Around about the same time we brought PPAP out. And certainly the philosophy at Rolls was it's a level of starting to get the focus on APQP in a contained way. it's a bit late to find out you haven't done the planning right, but it starts focusing the mind. And that was a bit of the debate that came out. So we added that to the list.
Good.
And then what's the relationship then in terms of the customer? Well, it's getting clarity of what the expectation standards wise. Now the world's changed and we've got a lot more consistent amongst the customers, but it's also who's the approver. So RM 14145 calls them cares, and then it's building relationship between that person and the organisation to know what the standards are. And it's almost like starting the journey towards APQP. And that's the bit we had quite a discussion around.
That's really interesting because those of us who are sort of APQP purists, PPAP is part of APQP, but actually you can start thinking about PPAP before doing absolutely all of the APQP, can't you? So that's a very good feedback. That's great. Anybody else got anything that we've missed as well?
Yes, I just wanted to add one point from the APQP as an input or a requirement from the customer we need. So the design FMEA. So what I learned from the AES 13100 is to perform the process FMEA, we need the design FMEA. But from my experience, I have never seen a customer sharing any design FMEAs or sitting together with us and preparing the process FMEAs together with us. So this is something, mandatory.
Yeah, so within our 13,100 training, we say that the designer armed with the DFMEA should be part of the PFMEA. And so it's not just the DFMEA you need, it's the interpretation of that as well. So I will note that down. I'll put it under phase 3 because most of us will probably put APQP as phase 3.
Yeah, so this is kind of related to that. We would never provide our DFMEA, but we
No.
provide an input data sheet with the key features we want you to account for in your PFMEA. So that comes from the design FMEA. So, and I don't know how other OEMs communicate that information. But June hit upon something that I think we missed. And here, he mentioned key characteristics. And we have SPC, but SPC of what? And so that gets into the discussion of customer flow down key characteristics and supplier self-selected key characteristics.
Process, yeah.
That might want to be brought up from APQP, obviously, we'll cover that in the design planning and design FMEAs as an output of that, but might want to make it a little more visible than where it is right now. And from this morning's pitch by Thomas, be very curious to know if those CPKs were on GKN selected features or were they customer flow down. My guess is they were GKN selected, which
To be so
would
many.
be-
Yeah.
to be so many, which
Yeah.
means GKN found value in controlling their process and saw where they needed to identify features as part of their process control system. That's one of the visions of zero defects, is to see people self-select their own key characteristics. On that note, I'll turn it back.
Brilliant. Okay, so what we're going to do now is you've now essentially got your list for phase 3, because it's the items that are left, as long as you agree with those items. Have a go at listing those, who you would do the leadership of those activities, etc. But the key thing for this particular phase, the final phase, is the sequencing. So I'd like you to determine whether you've got reactive, proactive, preventive. Does it look like that? Or do they overlap? Are there some things like human factors that would go across all of it. Have a think about it within your organization. Is it a sequence, or is there some level of overlap? Okay, so I'll give you 20 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back and close. Okay, thank you. Right, the alarm is going off, and Eva Marie has done the best with the weather, and she's stopped the rain, so thank you. So let's have a go at anybody got any aspects of your conversation that you'd like to share for phase 3? Oh, excellent, thank you.
Okay. I was told I have to stand up, so I will definitely do that. Okay, so one of the things that I had an epiphany about doing this exercise that I thought was so great was a lot of companies right now are in the reactive and proactive mode because A, we're trying to do catch up from COVID, right? We're always firefighting. It's the squeaky wheel, right? Interjection of AS 13100 that says now, I want you to be more preventive. So I think of a Venn diagram. If you have reactive, if you have proactive, if you put that Venn diagram together, the center strategy should be AS 13100. Convincing the preventive approach is the best approach in moving forward that would minimize that reactive mentality. But that's a culture, right? We're so ingrained in firefighting, fixing the squeaky wheel. We have a few sprinkle of proactivity, but I think the true lesson that I learned, even from the conversations that we had at our table, was how do you have a preventive mentality? How do you really usher in, from a deployment perspective, the benefits of having a preventive culture?
Wonderful, thank you very much. And I think your epiphany actually worked then. Anybody got anything else? We were talking at one table, I can't remember which it was, about new product introduction being the preventive side. And then, is it this table here? I can't remember which table it was. We were talking. No, anyway, so, and this is on the sequencing side, is that this isn't done in a sequence, one after the next, and it depends on what you're actually working on as to what you do with it. So anybody got any feedback on the sequencing that you can share with us? Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so at the table we were discussing also, and we found that it will depend of the program. Depending of the state of the program, you will be in one or other phase. We were talking that legacy versus NPI. So at the end, we were also saying that it's not do that first and do the other one first. It's do that, and in parallel, if you've got new NPI, do the other, and you will receive the benefits afterward when you will be in production with the NPI. So it's kind of parallel work we were talking before.
Brilliant. Okay, yes, that's exactly what we were hoping that you would come up with. So if we stay in reactive, if we only do reactive, we'll stay in reactive, won't we? We'll never actually progress. So for those parts that are currently in production, legacy parts, then you will need to be reactive because you've not done the preventive to start with, and then go through that journey. But anything new, definitely do phase 3, the preventive, and also there was something that the team, Carl, your team said about, thank you, leads me nicely on to.
Hello, it's Carl again. I feel like I should say I'm an alcoholic or an APQer. Yeah, the conversation we sort of drifted into is if you then go and reflect and go, because the letters APQP seems to scare the hell out of everybody, and to be honest, and come along, there's a brilliant session in the morning tomorrow to try and talk about it in a more simplified way. The conversation was you can start this stuff earlier, but think of it about where change is happening.
Yes.
And size it, right? So we're all different sizes, organisation-wise and supply chain-wise, we manage and stuff. But just think, if you're going forwards and you want to start learning a bit about how can we get better at APQP, start on method chains. So out of the requirements, it's a small amount of requirements you need to focus at. That's one strategy. Another one is when I'm moving sources. So when I say method change, it could be a significant one. It doesn't have to be every one. But any significant change, say, well, let's start applying APQP the proactive way. Same with transfers. So major transfers, moving from one facility to another. Why wouldn't you want to try and engineer the new process correctly? And that's what you get. So that was the bit of, when you start looking at this as a series, think about also bringing some of this stuff back a bit earlier. Pilots, small scale activities, use that learning on bigger deployment. And to be honest, as an organisation I'm in, that's what we've done over the last 12 years now. The very first days was an engine called XWB 83, 84K. We picked 300 parts. I remember a few years at the end of when we put it in production, the exec going to me, why didn't we do this on everything? Because of the learning we got, yeah, and the benefit. So think about the scope when you apply as well as just doing it. Just don't go do it on everything. Have a think where to learn. And that is going to be also built into what competency, skills, experience you've got in your organisation, what resources you can free up.
Yeah.
We can free up 2 good, passionate people, and they're really enthusiastic about this. Give them the freedom to learn, and they're the ones who then become the disciples and teach others in the company longer term. Okay.
Yeah, and I think we said that that dedicated resource to do it is quite important, because otherwise, if it's not dedicated, they'll get drawn into the firefighting and the reactive activity. So try and do something to allocate 1, 2 enough people to actually take them away from everyday life to do this activity, because we all know that improvement it works so much better when it's done in a focused way. Excellent. Anybody got any customer support that I might need to add to my flip chart here? The only one I've got is designer involved in PFMEA. Other than that, you're all happy, are you? Customers are doing everything that they need to do. Generically. Okay, excellent. Right. And it really just leads me to close then. So you're now considered an industry leader due to their zero defect methods. Your customers have now asked you to partner with you and to mitigate defects from the start using APQP. And your leadership and employees have been asked to present to your customers and industry about your journey and lessons learned. So that's what happened this morning. GKN were here telling us about what they've done. And here is our, somebody's put another name on there as well. We just thought that one looked like Dr. Riggs. So, Carl, please don't tell him. So yeah, thank you very much for all of your interaction on that. That's been good. And now you've got something you can take away to go and deploy within your organisations if you haven't already done so. So I do believe that tea and coffee is now going to be available. Yes? Any questions?
We had one really excellent discussion, wanted to share and see the opinion. Who owns APQP? Who owns it? Who's responsible for, like, say, the health of it? Who would make changes if it were found to be unhealthy? And we know a lot of different groups are involved in a company with APQP and have roles and responsibilities, but ultimately, who would own it? And we just thought we'd throw that out there.
Okay.
Yep.
From my point of view, I think it really depends on the organisation and the structure within any organisation. Each and every, because I know Carl's going to be talking about this tomorrow, but each and every key activity should really have a RACI done on it, so a responsible and accountable, what's the other one? Consulted, thank you, and informed, yes. So for each and every step, who should be responsible for it overall? It could be any one of design engineering, manufacturing engineering. I'd err away from quality, personally. I think quality are there to govern it, to make sure that it is working well. They can do the auditing of it, the governing of it. We were having a discussion in one of the groups about having a project management office that runs it. So there are various ways of designing it within your organisation. Does that help at all? What's your view, Pete?
Project management, who owns the actual program or is responsible? It could be a program manager, program office, whoever's assigned that, say, section of an engine, let's say.
Yeah.
And they have to make sure costs, quality, and the whole APQP process and the coordination. Now, quality would typically own the integrity of APQP and making sure it's executed. They certainly don't do all the tasks. But it was just a great discussion. We're just, you know, we weren't exactly sure, and that was kind of the conclusion. It depends on how you're structured, how you want to manage it.
Yeah.
But we just didn't know what others' opinions would be.
Yes, I suppose who in your organisation is currently responsible for new product introduction would probably be the first starting point for me. But I think it depends how big your organisation is as well, because not all organisations have got a program management office. But hopefully you've got some level of program management professional that knows how to corral the right people at the right time. But that all needs to be embedded into your processes, and who does what, agreed. So there's so many steps in getting this right that hopefully we've helped you take some baby steps forward during today. So, we've got another question in the back.
It's picking up on the accountable for APQP.
Can you just be a bit louder? Yeah.
I can do. No idea if the microphone's working. But the accountability side, I'm trying to push it more towards the general manager and the person who has the financial responsibility for the health and well-being of the facility, because they're the people that are going to be driving it. So they're the key signatory at every gate. So from an accountability perspective, for me, it has to be the general manager. It doesn't sit down at operational level. It's right up at the top of the business to sign off and say, that's where we need to be.
Okay, if that works in your organisation, fabulous. That's great. Yeah. Any other ways of doing it that may differ within your organisations? No? Okay, right. So, 2 minutes early.